Claudia, welcome.
Hello, Paul. How nice to be here with you.
Yeah, great to be talking to you, Claudia, as always. Now, I know you have, I think, over 40 years experience in the industry. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we probably could do, a whole session or several sessions on that. But let's just give us a brief. If you can take us through a brief summary of your career, I think that would be interesting. Where did it all start for you, Claudia?
Well, it all started in 1977 when I got back. I'm originally from Colombia. I studied high school in the United States and got back. I wanted to be originally an archaeologist,
Okay.
and
Yep.
it didn't happen. So I said, okay, what do I have? And my talent was language.
Yep.
So I went to university. Well, at that time, it was a small college. Now it's part of the National University. And I started working as an interpreter first and then as a translator. And this is the 70s. So
Yep.
that is way, way back. Translation was done in a typewriter. We had to consult books in a library. We had to actually walk to the library. It was, we spent more time typing than translating. So that's where it all started. And then it just became a passion. So I've worked with, I would say, some of the biggest 500 companies throughout my life.
Yep.
And I've been honored to be in multiple life or death situations in interpreting where you feel that you have made a difference. And it just became 10 or 12 years ago when we had to switch to certain types of technical environments that I was not really familiar with. I decided to just start a training with pros. I got a call from pros, and we started there. And then I was fascinated because I had been a teacher before throughout several parts of my career. And I had done a lot of teaching to corporate America and corporate Latin America. And I just felt that's it. I fell for it and I fell in love with it. And ever since, that's like 80% of my workload is to just create content. And now I just hit 65, which is officially old age. So I have been semi-retired for a couple of years, and I just work, I have one client left from many clients. I left one just to be in touch with the industry, just to know what's going on, what the client wants. This is a very picky client, so I know that they're asking for top state-of-the-art things, and they're using state-of-the-art. So I work for them, and I do, a lot of volunteer work for translation, and then I do pros, and that's about it. And I have 13 grandkids, so that keeps me very, very busy.
13, did you say?
13, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing.
So, but about the career, it started in the early 70s, and then it just became a passion. And then training for interpreters became a passion 10 years ago through pros.
Yep. No, brilliant. Yeah, well, we've worked with a lot of you. We've worked with you, on a lot of different topics. So yeah, brilliant. And for a very long time, it has been a very long and successful relationship with pros.com. So yeah, brilliant. And today we're going to be talking about MT, or machine translation.
Yes.
So I'm really looking forward to this. It is, of course, a little bit of a controversial topic, I would say.
Yes.
Not that we're going to be avoiding controversial topics, but here. So yeah, where are we with MT? Would it be fair to say that you're in favor of integrating machine translation into translator workflows or not?
Yeah, I believe that the translator, as the person that I was trained to be, that except for literature and poetry and other very, very specific niches, that is no longer a viable commercial solution. You can do it, but not to make a living on it. To make a living with translation, we now have to really integrate it with computer assisted tools, CATs, and with machine translation in CAT tools or on itself. I tell you, I am impressed. And that's why I vouch for DeepL, because I have used it myself a lot for my volunteer work. And it is really fascinating to have seen it evolve to a point where nowadays I sometimes get drafts that I can barely correct for real.
Yeah.
So sometimes when they just sent me something like, for example, they say, Claudia, we need urgently this. We have a meeting in 2 hours and half of our team doesn't speak Spanish. Can you translate this quickly into Spanish? I translate, let's say, 20 pages of English into Spanish, just and I just read them through and make corrections, and that's it. You can have a draft. It's not for publishing, but it is readable for those who are going to be in the meeting. So that concept of the good enough is something that really I'm trying people to understand, that up until about 12 years ago, we used to work for the top quality. All of us were trained nothing but the best.
Yeah.
And as of 10 years ago, good enough is enough for the client. So we have to learn to let go of what we want as translators and start working for what the client wants, which is fast, cheap, and just good enough. Only if they're going to publish for advertising, for example, that's when it has to be perfect. Human parity is the new kid in the block. The term human parity is now what we talk about when we talk about machine translation. So machine translation is not at human parity. It is not, but it is at human parity with a little bit of our involvement, not 200 hours of our time.
Sure.
And so the difference is that let's say the first 150 hours that it would take me to go and do a first draft translation, the machine does it for me. I only invest the last 50 hours. So
and that comes out instantly, presumably. It is a matter of seconds, isn't it? Yeah,
150 hours gone like that. And then I put my 50 hours into editing that draft that the machine gives me. And I have 200 pages. I can deliver them in 3 days. Whilst if I had that, 10 years ago, it would take me maybe a month. I don't know. I'm not very good with the timings at this point. But what I'm saying is, in terms of the volume, if a client says, would you be able to have this good enough, not for publishing, but for my lawyers to see it, for example, in terms of the law, all this discovery right now, they just want to see, not even good enough, just to see if there's portions that they're going to send for human parity. So you can have 2,000 pages. Instead of 2,000 pages translating, you're going to be 2,000 pages reading and seeing if there are mistakes or not mistakes. Now, when it's human parity, then you're going to invest the time, but you don't have the first, I would say, 3/4 of it. So it takes away the first 3/4 of your work for real.
Yeah. Wow. That was quite an answer, Claudia. So much information packed in there. And I think, I'd like to kind of break it down and sort of divide it up a little bit and talk about some specific points, because I think, as I said, it is a subject that sort of gets people quite emotional. And I think it is worth understanding some of the points of view that you have on it, and trying to go into it a bit, because I think a lot of times when people have strong opinions, either one way or the other, I think we fail to look at the detail of what's actually happening. So I mean, let's take DeepL, for example, and let's take your language pair, so Spanish, English, English, Spanish, right? So in the major languages, DeepL is very good, right? So Spanish presumably would be one of the best in terms of the quality of the output. Whereas would it be correct to say that once you get outside of let's say the 10 most translated languages, then it starts to become less accurate? Is that true?
Totally. But that doesn't mean that you cannot use it as a tool to save. In Spanish, it's saving me 3/4 of my work. Maybe in Russian to Italian, it's going to save the person half of their work.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of make. I just kind of wanted to make that.
Oh yes,
that
no, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, brilliant.
Yes.
And I think the other thing that you said about good enough, I think this is a really really a topic that we should be exploring in more detail, because I think as translators, we are taught, much as you mentioned, that everything has to be perfect quality, right? And that's how you're taught as a translator. You deliver the very best that you can. And therefore, anything that isn't up to that standard is simply poor quality translation, or has been done by someone who's not very good, or whatever. So there's definitely that mentality out there. Now, the other thing, which I can understand, of course, now the other thing that I've heard recently is when it comes to what we might call the content explosion. So there's so much content out there. It's simply a fact that all of this content cannot be translated by human translators because there's too much content. So
right.
There is, if for certain types of content, so it might be web content or just continual updates, or just, we're talking about huge volumes of content out there, we do need some kind of machine translation if that is going to be translated at all. Otherwise, it simply wouldn't be translated. So the options are then MT plus post editing, MT on its own, or nothing. So I think there's that reality in the market, and I'm glad that people are talking about this more. I was talking with someone else recently about these different levels, different pricing levels. In fact, I've talked to a couple of people recently on the podcast about different pricing strategies for different levels of quality, which is something that perhaps wasn't that common a number of years ago, precisely because what you've said about it being simply the best quality and nothing else will do. So I think that's a really really important. And I'm also glad that you mentioned CAT tools. So I think it is widely accepted that CAT tools form part of a translation process. I think that's, I don't have the statistics with me, but I think the vast majority of translators are using CAT tools in some way. And then obviously a CAT tool can be integrated very easily with a machine translation engine. And then we also have the question of, I don't know how this would work with DeepL in terms of the inputs, but we have AI, we have machine learning, where you work with certain type of engine, that type of engine gets better over time, and that type of engine gets used to a certain type of translation or certain type of document over time. So there's a whole bunch of different things going on, which simply means that, to my point of view, that the words machine translation, that can mean a whole range of different things, and that can mean a whole range of, like you said, very good output in Spanish, to it could be poor and inappropriate in some cases. For example, if you're going to work with a language of lesser diffusion, and then you're going to use that output for advertising purposes where everything needs to be right. So there's a whole range there. That's right. Okay.
Well, now that you mentioned that, see, I've always told people the analogy of the medical industry. That's an industry that all of us, regardless of the part of the world we are in, we all know. So you don't go to a surgeon for something in your arm. You have a pain in your arm, you go to your doctor. You don't go to a surgeon. If you are going to go to a surgery, you don't go to your PCP, you go to a surgeon. So in the medical industry, we have nurses, or even we have health assistants, then we have nurses, we have nurse practitioners, which in the United States, at least they're almost like doctors, but they can do everything except prescribe. Then you have doctors, then you have specialists, then you have special surgeons, and there's all in between. And then whatever you have in your body or even in your mind, you go to the specialist and you pay for that specialist. You pay your PCP care provider, primary care, your home doctor, this amount, let's say $1, and you're going to pay the surgeon $10, and you are okay with it because you understand the differences in that. But you cannot tell the surgeon to just do a nail excision, and you cannot tell a practitioner to do a surgery. And that is kind of like, translators have been this mentality that there's only one quality of service, and there is not, and least of all nowadays, because the machine translation output, depending on the machine, is good, bad, or very bad, or excellent. Let's say 4, the output itself. But also, so on this side, we have the output of the machine, but also on this side, we have the client's needs. The client's needs are not the same needs as they were 10. So we still have up here, let's say for marketing, for advertising, for publishing, for etc., we have excellent, human parity, what we call human parity. But then we have good enough, and then we have gist, which is even lower than that. It's just what we're using a lot in the, for example, in the legal industry, in discoveries, where you have 20,000 pages of discovery that you just need to know if you need to translate this or not. That's the only thing. They just want the gist. So what I want people to understand is that it's depending on the quality of the output and the quality of the client. Is the quality of your output here and the quality that the client asking here, you've got a lot of work to do. But is your client requesting gist, and you're trying to, and you have a very good machine, you're only going to read it. That's it. And so how do you have to understand that.
Yes, and I think as we work in the industry, I think it is we are able to understand that. But how do you explain that to a client? How have you found that sort of client education in terms of?
Okay, my perspective has always been that's not my problem. Educating the client is not my problem. I'm the translator, I'm the post editor. Then on my side, I belong to this associations or to this corporate, and then those are the ones that educate the client. It's very difficult for me as a translator to educate the client.
Okay.
Now, if I receive a job, from a client that wants very cheap, to pay very cheap for very good quality, then I can explain, listen, I can do this, but it's not going to be a professional translation of parity to human, or I can do the old style human translation of the old style human race.
So you give different options. You give different options to the client sometimes.
Yeah, and you can tell them, if you want humanly translated documents, I'll charge you my human translation rate.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think one thing is clear, Claudia, is that lots of translators are now using MT as part of their process. Obviously, depending on the language pair, depending on the type of document that they're working with, depending on, people are putting into different levels of post-editing into that, depending on the client relationship, everything that goes into this equation. But it's clear that a lot of people are working with MT, and I think that's only going to continue. I mean, from my point of view, I think it makes sense for translators to understand this process, even if they decide that it's not for them. But I think many people are going to realize that it is something that they can work with. It is something that's going to increase output, is going to increase efficiency. And it's not about providing a poorer quality work to translators. Claudia, still there?
Yes.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I thought you'd frozen there for a minute because you were very, very still.
I'm just hearing, trying to hear and understand what you're saying, because I think that there's one thing that we as a translation community have not accepted, and that's the term of post editor. If you see the word post editor, it does not have the translator in it. Post editors are translators that post-edit, but they are not doing translation. The translation process in the brain of taking one word in one language and transferring it to another language, that is what translation is.
Yes.
We are not doing that. If we're using machine translation, it's the machine that's doing the translation, but we understand enough about translation to see if that output of the machine is or not of good quality. And that's why there's many engines, and I vouch for DeepL because the work that I do today, I'm going to tell you, it's very simple, it's forward, it's not complicated, it's not, for example, the automobile industry, to tell you the ones that I would never work for. Never in my life have I accepted mechanics. I can't. But that, for example, maybe DeepL is not a good engine for it. Maybe IBM Watson is. I don't know. So each of those industries has had, like the medical industry had with medications or everything, find what suits them. Now we as translators, if we are given the opportunity, then we also have to determine which is the best engine for us, for our language pair, as you were saying in the beginning, for our market and for our personal needs. There's people working in Africa or in the Sahara that just don't have the tools or don't have the access to this or that. And let me tell you, DeepL has changed their lives because they just go to a cafe or someplace, they hook up a special device that there's now to ensure quality, or, well, there's some that I train them how to block off certain things. They translate in 2 minutes. That's all they have on internet. They go to computer, they clear it, and then they go back to another internet cafe and do it. So we in the West are very much used to the fact that we have internet access, CAT tools, computers, and all the sorts of things. And there's a gigantic portion of the world that doesn't have that to work with. And those are the countries that are exploding now, that are needing, because all those things that we have done in the past 40 years, they're needing now, just in terms of medical equipment and healthcare resources in Africa. That is hugely, just in terms of the immigration crisis in the East right now, you need a lot of things. So what I want people to understand is that we do not live in the same world of even 10 years ago. The world has different needs. And if we really want to be of help to humanity, we have to think, what are the needs out there that I can meet? And what am I willing to abide or not? I stopped translating certain things that I had done for 30 years because I did not want to do it that way, the way that during the change into CAT tools. I just didn't like it. But then I adapted to what I want to do. So it's all in you. It is you who decide. But you're not going to stop this. Me as a translator, I can't stop it. I'm not vouching for this. I am just cannot stop it. So I have to learn to work with it, adapt to the circumstances, and get to know the tools that you will need in 5 years, because that's the other thing. So I read a very, very recent MemSource, which is a CAT tool, has a fantastic study, a research paper that they published. And they say, what did they say? 60% of all translation in the world is done by machine translation already, without human intervention. And nobody wants a human to intervene there. It's already only 40% of that. They're saying, okay, let's have a human in the mix. So because there's not enough humans for that other 60%, whether we want it or not, there isn't. There is an overload of translation to be made, and not enough translators that can do it quickly as our world needs it.
No, brilliant. No, there's so much to this, Claudia. So many different things going on, and I think for a translator listening to this, it's just about finding your place in this in this world, if you like, in business. Finding out what processes are going to work for you, what clients are going to work best with you, and so on, and sort of adapting and adjusting. And another word I heard the other day was upskilling. So sort of adding skills to your existing bank of skills, of which this CAT tool MT integration could be one of. So yeah, there's lots of things going on. Let's take a minute now, the last few minutes, just to talk specifically about your workshop, because your workshop has been extremely popular, absolutely massively
I
popular.
love it.
We've got the next edition coming up on the 28th of April 2022. But if you have missed that for any reason, then head on over to training.pros.com and you will see the next edition up there, because we are on a cycle for this very popular workshop. So tell us a little bit about who it's for and what you're going to help people achieve, Claudia, please.
Okay. The name of the workshop is to learn to use DeepL as part of your experience. And I use DeepL because that's what I use. I only teach what I use, or what I have personal experience with.
Yeah.
So I've worked with all the other engines, and they're good, but for me, for my purposes, my language pair, my work, etc., that's DeepL. So I've become very good at using it, and I want to give people that knowledge. How do you use it? It's very, very simple. We'll cover that in the first 20 minutes. So there, you've done it. What I will teach afterwards is what's important, which is how to post-edit that machine translation that you got from DeepL. And so we're going to be working on all the little things that I've learned to do that will make your life easier, so that you can use DeepL. I say DeepL, but we could call it anything you want. Google Translate, you could call it IBM, whatever you want to call it, the engine of your preference. Once you know how to use DeepL, I like it because its output is extraordinarily good in my language pair, in the domains where I work.
Yep.
But after that, if you like other engines, the rest of the workshop is about quality, how to attain quality. If you want human parity, or if they ask for non-human parity, they're asking you for good enough. What do you do? And the other thing is how to recognize where not to spend your time, because I think that the big frustration of translators in becoming used to both CAT tools and machine translation is that we have spent so much time trying to correct errors that are not significant for the client. It's a horrible thing to say. I would have not agreed with myself 20 years ago.
Yeah, again, I like that. I like that because it's a controversial statement, but I think it's also a very practical one, given the times and given the content.
And I tell you, I would have said that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's today. You know, that's it. The cars that we're using today are not the cars we were using in the 1970s. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no more. A lot. You take it to a mechanic, and a mechanic nowadays is used to the cars of today. That's what they were trained on. That's what they want. So I want people to understand that the world of today, for whom we're producing this, is not what they were 40 years ago. That's not it. Yeah. So we have to adapt to the client's needs. If anything, I want people to understand from this is, what are your client's needs? If you understand what your client needs, then you can talk him into paying you for human parity. Then you know. But if you misunderstand your client's needs and you're trying to convince your client to have human parity for some memos that they're going to take to a workshop with their sales agents that are going to end up in the trash can 2 hours from there, they don't care about that. They just want it fast and cheap. And then you decide whether or not you do that fast and cheap. It's within you to say no. It's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But don't spend time where you're not needing to spend time.
Okay, brilliant. So, really looking forward to it. Anyway, it's 28th of April, 2-hour workshop, 2 p.m. GMT, and Claudia will take you through everything that you need to know about DeepL, including how to use the free version, how to use the paid version, learn to ensure confidentiality, post-editing techniques, quality assurance rules, and how to use and create electronic glossaries. So I think pretty much everything you'd need to know in order to get started. As I said, it is a very, very popular course. And I think one of the reasons for that is something that I mentioned earlier. I think it's just, at the very least, exploring this possibility for your own workflow, or for, it might apply to part of your workflow, or to a certain type of clients, or if you have work with multiple language pairs, it might work well for one of those language pairs. So I think looking for these additional efficiencies is something that makes sense in today's day and age. We always talk about rates a lot. And we talk about, for example, getting 10% more, 20% more, 30% more on a rate. I don't think we talk enough about productivity and efficiency, because if you can increase your productivity by 30%, you're essentially doing the same thing. You are increasing your rate. So that's something else to keep in mind. So Claudia, as always, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your patience with me. So really appreciate all that you guys do. I'm a fan of pros and everything that you do. I follow you closely. So thank you very, very much.
No, thanks to you. Thanks to you, Claudia. And just finally, that link again, training.pros.com. Hope to see you there. And Claudia, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
All the best. Bye-bye.